Welcome to the Untaming Masculinity Podcast. I'm your co-host, Dan, and I'm here with my co-host, Brad. Welcome to the show. This is a new podcast. We're exploring all the different topics related to masculinity and becoming a better man. We're going to talk a lot about marriage, fatherhood, self-improvement, physical fitness, all the things that you want to do to untame your masculinity. So, Brad, I want to take a quick second just to give a little background on each of us. We did this a little bit in the previous episode, but I think it's important in the beginning that people kind of just get to know us. So, I'm Dan. I've lived on what I've dubbed the Isle of Karens, Long Island, New York, with my wife and my two daughters. I've been married for, I think it'll be about 18 years this summer. I better know that exact number, not just about.
Yeah, you better.
I'm an engineer by trade, and I'm currently a director of manufacturing for a company working in the electronics industry. Becoming a better man has always been something that's interested me throughout life, and I've gone through ebbs and flows of that. But it really kind of kick-started as I began to explore this movement about 3.5 years ago. I had heard Ryan Michler's Order of Man podcast, and through that, I ended up joining his mastermind group called the Iron Council. That's where I met Brad. We were on a battle team together, and then we have slowly evolved into a different battle team and into leadership roles through there. I've moved up into different leadership roles, and Brad has done the same. So, Brad, how about you?
So you have to excuse me. I'm a little under the weather today, so don't mind me if I sniffle a little bit here or there. But yeah, my name is Brad. I live in Utah, out in the Rocky Mountains. Born and raised here. My dad's from Boston, so that was one of the connections that Dan and I made early on. Is he's a Massachusetts man. My dad's from Massachusetts, but I will be married 10 years this fall, so that's pretty exciting for us. We have two kids. They're my world. I love them to pieces. I work in tech. I'm a technical lead for one of the tech unicorns out here in Utah, and I think my journey has been one in which I found my way to the Order of Man because I thought I was on the verge of losing my marriage. I had forgotten what it meant to be a capable man who could provide for his family, who could protect them. And as a result, because I'd lost my way, I'd been failing my wife through health troubles, through just not being present, through being dishonest. And I thought I was on the verge of losing that and losing everything. So I needed to do something different. So I found Order of Man. I took to the message that Ryan Michler shares almost immediately. And it led me to commit further and further to, like Dan said, join the Iron Council, which has changed my life in innumerable ways that as we speak throughout this podcast, I'll divulge. It's one of those things where I finally had a medium in my life to start effectuating change. And it was awesome. So that's what brought us here. Here's an opportunity that Dan and I both identified that we both feel comfortable speaking with others. We've both leveled up our lives in such a way that who else can we help? Who else can we introduce this message to restore, reclaim, and untame what it means to be a truly capable male, a man?
Awesome. All right, so today we want to talk about something that I think is a little near and dear to both of us. We are on a battle team in the Iron Council called Battle Team Romulus, and we have a model for our battle team, and I'm going to butcher the Latin, but it is aut viam inveniam aut faciam, which
man, that was amazing.
That was awesome, right? Which basically translates to I will find a way or make one. So, a little background. Our friend Cameron and I were the founders of this battle team, and in the process of creating this group of roughly 15 men, you're tasked with coming up with a name and a slogan. So we dug into a bunch of different names, and to be honest, my daughter, who is fascinated with all types of mythology, said, you should name your battle team Romulus. And she told me a little bit about Romulus. So Romulus in Roman mythology is this guy who had a brother named Remus. They were, as the story goes, sons of Mars. Mars and a human named Rhea had these two boys. So Romulus and Remus were of royal descent. Their grandfather was Numitor, and long story short, Numitor's brother, Amulius, I'm going to butcher names today, uh, overthrew him, usurped him, as you will. And, you know, when all this happens, Amulius decides that, I don't want any of Numitor's heirs. So he killed any of Numitor's sons, and he ordered that Romulus and Remus be thrown into the Tiber River. Through a series of events, and depending on where you read, the events are a little different. So whatever, I'm not going to get into them. They didn't end up in the river. They got placed by the side of the river, and as the story goes, a she-wolf came by and suckled them to health until some shepherds came by. Right, and this is a long story, but we're going to get to the point here in a minute. Long story short, the shepherds raised Romulus and Remus, taught them about their heritage, their lineage and who they were. At a certain point, Romulus and Remus led an ambush, killed Amulius, restored Numitor to the throne, and as a reward, they were given the right to go start their own city, their own tribe, as you were, and that is the origins of Rome. There's a lot of stuff that happened during that journey to create Rome. A lot of hard things that Romulus and Remus went through, including realizing that they had a bunch of soldiers and a bunch of men, but no women to procreate and continue on this lineage of their city. So they ended up basically taking women from the Sabins. I think that's how you pronounce it. They originally, tried to get them to intermarry, and back then I guess that wasn't a thing. So they said, all right, well, we'll find a way. And they ended up just taking women and creating a civilization on their own. So the whole story really, excuse me, the whole story really kind of resonated with Cameron and I, because here are these guys who they just got a shit lot in life. They came from a lot. They had it all taken away, and they had to build it all back up. And they literally just found a way or made one. And we had seen that quote in a couple of different places, and we thought, you know what, this is a great story about creating your own personal empire. And then this is a great quote that kind of goes along with that theory. When I dug into the quote a little bit, though, I found it interesting. That quote has nothing to do with Romulus and Remus. It was actually attributed to Hannibal. And it's what he told his generals when they said that it was impossible to cross the Alps with elephants during the Second Punic Wars. So that's your little history lesson for the day on Romulus, Remus, and the history of I shall find a way or make one. But I think what we really want to talk about is the meaning of that for us. When we started the team and you came on and as a group of men we started to work together, it's a rallying cry, right? Where we were able to kind of say, you know what? Yeah, we're going to do hard things and we're going to work through it. But I think that really evolved into something else over time. And we can get into that, but I want to get your thoughts on what it means to you first.
Yeah. So it's a really good question, right? Like that mantra, that motto has resonated with me in the sense of we don't have answers in our life, right? Like a really good real life example of this was a conversation I had with a friend last night. Great friend, great guy. And he was talking to me about how he looks at certain people who have a silver spoon put in their mouth and how it's not fair, right? How this other friend of ours comes from money. His family owns a large business. So he's walked into this tremendous success throughout his life. And I was talking to him, it doesn't matter where he is or where you are now. It's the path forward that matters. You can't look at other people and hold yourself against them. You can only hold yourself against yourself. So the idea of finding a way or making one is essentially it's self-improvement, but it's also this desire and drive to push past the doubts, push past the natural man that's telling you that you can't, that you're inadequate, that you are a loser, that you are not special. You, all of ours, every single one of us has had that voice inside of our heads that has told us we're not good enough. We're never going to be capable of doing anything.
Right.
It's when you start to push past that and realize that the ceiling is the roof, as they say. Like, you will find a way to become whatever it is you want to be, or you will make that way. You will forge a path regardless of what it takes. Regardless of what you're staring down, there is always a way through. That's what it means to me. What about you?
Yeah, a lot of that resonates with me. It's for a long time in life, I thought that I was just kind of cast a lot, and this is what it was going to be. I was going to live this life and have this certain level of success and meet these criteria and be comfortable. And I'm never going to achieve this, whatever that was. Um, and as I kind of start to resonate with this saying and mindset, I realized it's just wrong. Whatever that is, there's a way to it. I just have to be willing to do the work. And I think that's what it really comes down to for me is what's the work? What's required to get there, right? You are
Yeah.
not limited by your socioeconomic situation, by your health, by your whatever. I mean, yeah, there's probably limitations put on you, or limitations isn't even the right word, but like speed bumps or impediments. But you can get through all of those. I don't care how out of shape you are. You can be, you know, in good shape. It might take you a much harder journey to get there than somebody else, but you can get to that point, whatever that definition is for you. Same thing for income, right? I could be a millionaire and make that kind of money. It's what is the journey and what is the work that I have to put into it. Nothing is impossible. There is a way to whatever you want. You just have to be willing to find the path and do the work. And I think I wanted to touch on this a little bit. We're both going through 75 hard right now, right? And I'm seeing this saying more and more in my life every day because there are days where I wake up and I've got my schedule laid out and everything just kind of clicks and I tick off all the boxes relatively easy. There's a lot of work involved in it, but if you plan things out, it's easy. But you've got kids, I've got kids, we're married, jobs, monkey wrenches get thrown at us every which way. And it's those times where you're like, well, that's still my goal. And now I've got all these rocks that are falling in my path. I got to find a way around them. I got to make a way through this.
So
So
here's a question for you.
yeah,
So naturally, it didn't come from 75 hard, right? Like, you had attuned your mind to be able to recognize, I got to find a way through this.
yep.
Can you recall a seminal moment or some epiphany or something along the way where you realized, holy shit, I can do this?
I don't know that it was a seminal moment, but I think that um, my journey into myself over the last 3 years has has really forged this mindset in me, right? Um, I'm not quite sure how to describe that. You know, when I started this journey of self development, it was, yeah, I can do that, but I can't do it, or it's too much work. It's too much. It's too hard. It's too, the journey is too long. Um, and at a certain point, something clicked, and I think it was working with men in a collective to to push myself forward. that kind of made that click where I said, you know what, this guy's doing this guy's doing that, you know, I see you doing things that are pushing you out of your comfort zone. And I'm sitting there going, just stop being comfortable. That was the thing. You know, we had a team member in our old battle team who was he was a big guy, overweight. We went on a backpacking trip together in Tennessee, and he was by far the most out of shape guy, and he just trudged along. Now we had some ups and downs, and there's some stories that aren't mine to tell about what happened on that trip with him. But I saw a guy that just said, "I'll be damned if I'm going to be left behind. I'm going to find a way to make this work." And I think that was one of the moments that kind of made it click in my mind as to, you know, you can do this. You can find ways to do whatever you want to do. You know, that same guy right now is building a homestead. He started like two different businesses. He's got a lot of different irons in the fire. And meanwhile, he's got a daughter who is going through some real heavy medical stuff right now. You know, and he and his wife are dealing with that. And I watch this guy, and he's just an inspiration because he just puts his head down and gets to work. And I think that was a good kind of learning lesson for me. Um, how about you? Was there a particular moment that really struck you, or was there anything like that?
So there have been, I would argue, and there are probably a couple, I guess you could say, throughout my life. I remember my dad when I was a kid. My dad wasn't one to effuse a lot of praise. He wasn't always telling me how great I was or this, that, or the other. He's a man of few words. I knew that he loved me. But one of the things he told me when I was a kid was, Brad, you never quit. You never give up. And I'd forgotten about that. I'd forgotten about that raw determination that I used to have as a kid. And I let life kick me in the balls, right? I'd allowed myself to get pretty overweight. Obviously, you know, as I disclosed at the beginning, a history of lying and dishonesty and wanting to be a quote unquote nice guy had led me down a cowardly path in my marriage. And I think the first time that I woke up to the capability of being able to accomplish hard things was my wife went through a health scare. Without getting into too many details, she was diagnosed with cancer. And I was presented a choice. Like when a moment like that happens with somebody you love, I mean, death comes to the forefront, right? What happens if this person dies? What happens if she's gone and I'm here to raise my kids alone? What happens to my kids if I can't take care of them? So at that moment, I mean, okay, let me back up. One other thing that kind of contributed to that was I, when I was 27, I had horrible stomach pain, got a CT scan, found out I had diverticulitis, which is common for people in their 60s. I had high blood pressure. On my mom's side of the family, there's a history of heart attacks. Several of my uncles and aunts have passed from heart attacks. So I was heading down a path that wasn't going to fare well for me. And I could not leave my kids alone. I could not do that to them, you know, coupled with the fear of my wife having cancer. And I didn't handle the situation the best, but I did start for the first time to get myself into a gym consistently, lifting, mostly lifting, doing some cardio, but I did it every day. I just found a way to get myself out of bed every day. Results didn't come immediately. Results took months and months. But after months and months of work, I remember it was a day in May. I was about to go on a business trip to Milwaukee. I got on the scale. I was like, holy crap, I've lost some weight. And I looked at myself, my shirt off, and was like, I'm starting to look better. And right then I realized I can do this. I can accomplish things. Now, I think that laid the groundwork for me to improve in other areas because I was still so far behind the ball when it came to the mental game or the emotional game that I still kind of puttered along until I found the Iron Council. And it was then that I started doing hard things because I had made the conscious decision to be extraordinarily uncomfortable. This was so far out of my comfort zone to enter a group where there were 600 guys at the time, high achievers, just badasses of men, like business owners, just good men church leaders, all this. So I come in here, I'm like, imposter syndrome. Brad is telling me, who the hell am I to be amongst these men? But I was like, I've got to try something different if I want to get different results. So I embraced the concept of being or feeling the most inadequate person in the room. Got a team, pushed past that bitch voice and that lack of confidence and just started to work. And having a group of men that buoyed me up and kicked me in the pants when I needed it gave me that focus and that direction to stay relentless. I was always able to kind of cull and pull all that history of being able to lose weight and get in better shape back to say, I can do other things. If I can lose weight, I can fix my marriage with my wife. I can stop lying. I can be honest. I can treat her the way that I need to. I can be present for my kids. I can take my professional career to the next level. I can start to do things that I've talked about doing or thought about doing, but actually go out and do them. And little by little, step by step, I was able to improve my financial career, or improve my career rather, financially, from a job title perspective, all of that. Like, the trajectory is incredible because I did the work. I've started doing things that I've wanted to do for years, like archery. I just started doing jujitsu because I said, you know what, I can do stuff. I don't need to be afraid. If I go into a situation where I'm scared, it's okay, because fear is just an emotion. It's not going to paralyze me. The only way through is to continue to stare down that fear and say, fuck you. Excuse my language.
So I wrote down a couple of notes while you're talking. First of all, the way that things started to add up for you, right? You said you got into shape, and then you started, hey, I can take care of my marriage. I can do this. I can do that. It reminds me a lot of like Dave Ramsey's debt snowball approach, right?
Yeah.
Where you take care of like the little things first, and they just progress, and you grow and you grow and you grow, and eventually you've hit that end goal, and it's like this exponential growth. Sorry, the engineer in me is coming out there with that, but it grows a lot quicker as you have those little successes. They build into bigger and bigger successes, and I think that's important. But the other thing that you mentioned too was, you started going to the gym and you didn't see results right away. It's real easy to quit when you don't get that immediate satisfaction, and I think that to me is one of the biggest mindset change points that I want people to take away, guys, to take away, is that just because you put the hard work in, you need to keep putting in the hard work, even if you don't see results, because they'll come. I promise they'll come. But putting your head down and getting to work, that is so much more important to seeing your results than, or to achieving your results, than just getting that quick dopamine hit of, hey, I went to the gym and now I got a six pack a day later. You know.
So I agree. I've got a question though for you along those
Yeah.
lines. What about the guy who wants to have that success, but he's never felt like he's seen it in his life, right? He goes to the gym for a couple weeks,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't see any progress at all, but because he's never seen that success and he wants to give up. What do you say to somebody like that? Like, yeah, that end goal sounds nice, but that's not for me because I've tried for 2 weeks. I've never seen success in my life with anything. How am I ever going to get there?
I would say to him, how long has it taken you to get into the shape that you're in now, right? I mean, you hear this a lot from fitness people, but if we're going to talk about physical fitness in general, right? It's taken you 20 years to get into the shape that you're in now. It's not going to turn around in 2 weeks. Let me ask you this: are you sleeping a little better? Do you feel a little better? Does your digestion or your gut feel a little bit better? Right? Do you feel a touch stronger? Are you starting to see immeasurable results? Yeah, maybe the scale's not changing. Maybe the picture with your shirt off isn't changing just yet. But have you been able to lift a little bit more weight? Have you been able to run, a minute longer? Whatever it is, can you find that small incremental gain where you can say, you know what, I'm 1% better than yesterday? That's what you got to look for, to me, to keep that progress going. You're not going to run the marathon quickly. It is a marathon, right? Physical fitness is a good example for all this because it's a long journey. So I think we need to find our incremental steps, but we also have to understand that, what got us to where we are now took a certain amount of time. And there's going to be a certain amount of time that you need to untangle that. So
Yeah. I think along those lines, I mean, you've heard me talk about it, but Atomic Habits, right? You've read
yeah,
that book.
yeah,
It's the power of incremental gains, right? It's getting 1% better every day. The problem is that most people want to have that instant gratification, that dopamine hit, and going to the gym once or getting up in the morning and praying once isn't necessarily going to give you the dopamine hit that pounding a bag of chips will.
yeah.
But it's those it's the gains that come from, or it's the latent gains. I was looking for the word that he says, and he talks about the latent gains, right?
Yep.
Those are the things that really move the needle. And for me, this doesn't work for everybody. Everybody's got their own reasoning. Everybody's got their why. You always hear that. Tell me your why. It's different for everybody, but there comes a point, I believe, for most men where you feel hopeless, where you feel like, I don't see the way out. It's at that moment where change can start to happen, because you can make two choices. You can either give up, or the only way out is through, but you are going to have to, your back is to the wall and you're going to have to fight with everything you have.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things where I think that most men, when they get to that point of I either have to give up or I have to fight, it's the fight or flight mentality. When you get there, what can you do to convince yourself and tell yourself, I have to do something different if I want anything more out of my life, and commit to just putting forth the effort? And then, like you said, it took 20 years to get you that way physically. It took me years in my marriage of poor choices to get me where I was. And I reached that moment of, I either change or I lose my wife, and with her I lose my kids. And with my back to the wall, that's when I decided what I've done every day of my life has not worked. What can I do differently? And because of that, I started to do something different. And it was very uncomfortable. It hurt. I think most guys are so scared of discomfort, so scared of pain, that they would rather suffer and be miserable than try to push through it.
Mm-hmm.
But for those men who finally embrace the fact that I have to do something different, I have to be something more, I have to change what I've done because what I've done has not gotten me results. Those men that embrace that and lean into that and struggle, those are the men who come out the other side and are better for it.
I would agree with that. You mentioned how you kind of have to get your back up against the wall. Do you think that in order to facilitate change, you have to hit rock bottom?
No, I don't necessarily believe that at all. I think that anybody can change regardless of the stage of life that they're in, right? But I do think that for some people, so I don't think that people have to necessarily hit rock bottom. I would argue, however, that some people who have never either felt success or feel like they felt success, if that makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
those types of people, you almost have to argue that they need to hit rock bottom in order for them to wake up, right? I think that people who have kicked the can down the road with their potential and never lived up to it, and have just lived in fear of their own shadow, sometimes need a jolt. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what happened with me. I think for most men, you don't ever need to hit rock bottom. You just need to have that determination. You have to almost take that David Goggins approach of, I'm going to callous my mind. Like,
Mm-hmm.
nobody's going to mess with me. And that starts with a single step. Regardless of where you are in your trajectory, you have to have that moment of recognition that's going to call you to action. And personally, I believe, after having been in the Iron Council for a while, that begins with having a vision, right? I don't know what you think about that, but if you have a vision of where you want to be and where you can see yourself being a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you have something there you can focus on, that light at the end of the tunnel. So it's, what can I do right now to change my trajectory so that I can get there.
I think that that is important, right? Because if you don't have a a vision, right, of where you're going, how do you know you're on the right path, right? How are you making decisions in your life, whether it's fitness, financial, personal development, whatever it is, to improve yourself correctly, right? So for instance with me, right? My vision from a physical standpoint, and we're just going to go use physical fitness here because it's an easy one for everyone to kind of relate to, in my opinion, is I want to be physically fit enough to be able to go on any hunt that I want anywhere in the US. I want to be able to go and eventually I want to go out by you and do a big Western hunt, right? And that's a different level of physical fitness than in the East Coast where I live. So I can do a lot of different things for physical fitness, right? I can go to the gym and jump on a treadmill and run for an hour. I can go lift really heavy weights. I can do a CrossFit style workout. But which one of those style of workouts is going to get me to my vision? I would make the argument that as much as I love it, a pure powerlifting routine is not going to get me where I want to go. I love picking things up and putting them down. You know, it's probably one of my favorite workout modes. But being able to deadlift 500 pounds is not going to get me to the point where I can hike 20 plus miles in the backcountry in the Rockies one day. So it's understanding that end goal and understanding the path that you need to be on to get there. Now, that path's going to zig and zag and go up and down, but you need to know the general, you know, I'm at point A and this is point B. And how do I get to there?
So I know I just talked about having a vision, and you just did. What about a guy who doesn't know what the hell we're talking about, who doesn't feel like he has a vision, right?
So I think this ties into something else that I noticed when you were speaking before. You brought up, I wrote down responsibility to others when you were talking a little while ago. Let's talk a little bit about the lone wolf mentality versus the pack mentality when it comes to this journey, right?
Yeah.
Um, and it ties into your vision statement, your vision question here too. The lone wolf guy who's trying to do it all by himself, he's got nobody to rely on. He doesn't have his band of brothers, his pack, to lean on, to question, to go to for advice, to to run things through. Whereas the guy within the group has the ability to say, "Hey, listen, you know me to some extent, and you know where I'm at. Um, Either this is where I want to go. Can you help me find a way to get there? Or I don't even know what the first step is. Can you help me?" Right? That to me is the strength of the pack, the strength of the brotherhood. Um, Having that group of men, and it has to be a group of men. You know, you can talk to your wife about it, you can talk to your girlfriend, you can talk to your church group, whatever it is. But to me, for what we're talking about and for the things that we really want to accomplish in life, it has to be a group of men who are like-minded. That's what helps you get to where you want to be. You know, we talk a lot in our weekly calls about our battle plans and how those roll into our visions. And you know, we just got done hot seating our group on their battle plans, and that was a lot of the questions was, okay, great, you're going to do this for the first quarter of 2022. How does what you're talking about doing on a day-to-day basis tie into your vision? And that group of men that we're responsible to is what's driving us towards our vision and helping us shape our vision.
So I've got an interesting thought, and you can disagree with me on this. I think that every man has a vision. Even if a guy's like, I don't have a vision, I don't know what you're talking about. Every single man on this earth, regardless of whether they're the lone wolf, whether they're heavily involved in a tribe, a community of other men, whether they're whatever. They have dreams for the future. They have goals that they want to accomplish. Maybe they're not refined or defined, or there's any clear path forward for them,
Hmm.
which is, a big objective for what we want. But, you know, my dreams 5 years ago were to be the best husband I could be. I wanted to be able to travel XYZ. I wanted to be able to start hunting. Those were things that I'd always wanted, but they're very jumbled, right? So I think that every man at least has an idea of dreams that he wants to accomplish. So this idea of formulating a vision starts with, okay, I've got all this stuff I want to accomplish. Let me take that, break that down, put that into something that's digestible and something that I can look at, say, okay, here's what I want to accomplish. What can I do today to help bring that to reality? So I think every man has that vision, but it's up to every single man to be able to clearly define and articulate that and then create steps to get there. And to your broader point, it's really hard to do that if you're trying to do it by yourself. Man is not meant to be alone. As a Christian, I mean, that was one of the first things that God said when he's creating the world, right? Man is not meant to be alone. You think of Native Americans, they were in tribes. You think historically in ancient Europe, they were in cities, they were in towns. Why are men never by themselves? Why are they always congregated? So the fact that something in society has told men that they're better off to be alone or a lone wolf or they can do it by themselves is crazy to me. Because if you're expected to do it by yourself, what happens when you're having a bad day? Who's there to pick you up when you need somebody to support you? If you choose to not have that, you're going to spiral out of control because nobody's there.
We all need that. Yeah. Yeah. We all need that from time to time. I don't care how big, tough macho you are. We all have days where we fall down. I agree with you to an extent that everyone has a vision. I think there's two caveats to that. One is I think a lot of times guys don't even realize they have a vision. Um, I've got guys that work for me who are, they come to work, they do their work, they go home, they play video games or watch movies or whatever, and it's rinse, rinse, wash, repeat. And they
But
don't.
wouldn't you argue those guys if you were to ask them, hey, what's a dream of yours? What's something you want to accomplish in a few years? You think there'd be something there, right?
I think there is, and that's what I was getting to. Is I think those guys have an internal vision. I think they have no way of processing a plan to get to it,
Yeah.
right? Or the circumstances of their life have in their mind beat them down so much that whatever their vision is, it's an impossible thing to achieve.
Yeah.
And I think that's where your mindset shift has to, this kind of goes back to your point too about kind of hitting rock bottom. Like you have to get to a point, and it may not be rock bottom, but I think it's a low point where you kind of have to say, all right, this status quo not working. It is it this if I do this for the rest of my life, this is what I will be. And if I'm happy with that, okay. But I don't think any of us are happy with maintaining. I think we all want to grow. Even,
Yeah.
we got some guys in the IC with us who are much older, and they're still pushing. They've got much different goals than guys, like me and you who are still, you know, early on in life. Although one could argue I'm more middle aged, but
You're already there, man. You're
but
already there.
but you know what I mean? It's you should always have that thing that you're reaching for. And it's how do you work to identify it and then identify that path to it. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what it starts with, where it started for me, and I know it started from you, is we come back to the gym a lot. I feel like because it's almost the low hanging fruit, if you will, because the gym is the way in which you can see tangible results immediately,
Yep.
right? You can get on a scale and say, I lost 2 pounds this week. You can look in a mirror and say, oh, stomach's looking a little smaller. You can realize I slept so much better last night. The important thing that I think most guys get away from is that when you look at those small things, those are accomplishments that should be celebrated. If you can celebrate those small things, it's like Dave Ramsey snowball, right? I've started to see these small gains. I recognize that. And even if you take a moment to actually speak that, right? Like I believe wholeheartedly, again, this comes back to the whole concept that James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits. If you audibly say something, right? He tells a story of the reason there are few accidents on Japanese train stations is because their train conductors will audibly say, "Hey, there's a light," or "There's this." Speaking out, bringing it from the subconscious to the conscious is a huge thing, in my opinion. You can get on the scale and look, oh, holy hell, I'm down 2 pounds today. That's awesome. The second you say that, it goes from being a subconscious thought out into the conscious. And that consciousness, if you allow it to, can start to change your life.
Hmm.
So
That was, I think it was a recent interview. I forget who I was listening to, but they were talking about the difference between motivation and discipline, right? And there's this age old debate over, is discipline more important than motivation, or motivation more important than discipline? I would argue that they are both tools that you can use, right? What you just talked about, that 2 pound loss, that's great. That's motivation, right? I moved the scale 2 pounds. That
dopamine hit.
motivates me to go to the gym tomorrow, right? But if that scale doesn't move, I need to rely on my discipline to go tomorrow and the next day. And then when that scale moves, I can use that as motivation. To me, they kind of reset each other.
Yeah.
I think that's a whole probably discussion that we can get into as well. But um, the you're right. The small victories are what builds to the big victories. And I think that's the other thing too. That goes back to my original point of, you can't expect that final goal to be an immediate thing. You have to understand that there are phase gates that I'm going to go through. And let's say the physical fitness is always a good one to come back to. Let's say I want to lose 50 pounds, right? Well, I don't just lose 50 pounds. I lose 1 pound, and then I've lost 5 pounds, and then I've lost 10 pounds. Celebrate those steps, like you said, and don't celebrate them by going out and buying a Carvel cake and shoving it down your throat. Celebrate it by,
Yeah.
hey, I look great. You know what? I'm going to go buy a new T-shirt that fits a little bit better, or I'm going to, whatever it is. But make it a positive celebration, even if it's just like, hey, hun, look at me, getting svelte. You know, it's you need to understand that the journey will have ups and downs, and ride the highs, and don't get too low in the lows, right?
I think you hit it head on, right? It's like, as you talked about, anybody to me who says that motivation is shit, I personally believe is full of shit. Every single person needs motivation. I do believe that motivation is temporary. It provides that little dopamine hit that you need.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, why would you get up out of bed every day and do something you absolutely hate with any sort of expectation that that's going to stick? Right?
Right.
You need something to keep you coming to that well every day. And eventually, after you do it long enough, that's when discipline starts to set in and you don't need motivation as much.
Yep.
Right? I go to the gym most every day.
Yep.
But I can also say that because I've been doing that for almost 3 years, that even on the days I have no desire to be there, I will get there. I will find a way to drag myself there.
Yep.
Because I've already passed the point where I need that motivation, because motivation had already given me what it needed to give me. So
I think that's the point where motivation and discipline evolve into dedication, right? You're at this point in your journey with the gym and physical fitness, you are dedicated to a certain outcome. So you can now use the ups and downs of discipline and motivation to continue your dedication. Probably not the most elegant way to say it, but I think you get the point. And that's something I really want people to take away too, right? This journey, this idea of I will find a way or make one, I will break through obstacles no matter what. It's a real gung ho saying. It's a real just, you know, put your shoulder down, keep stepping forward. Nothing will get in my way. Nothing. It's not going to happen. You are going to hit roadblocks. You are going to hit pitfalls. You're going to hit areas where you think, I can't get around this. There's a way. And you need to be dedicated to the journey and use the motivation, discipline that you've experienced in the past to get through those areas.
You got it. And one other thought, I mean, as you alluded to earlier, you didn't allude to it, you actually brought it up. You and I are both going through 75 hard right now. But I think what's making that so powerful is I've tried 75 hard before. I failed. But I had gotten to the point where I was at about day 40. There were days where I had to drag myself across the finish line.
Yep.
It was hard. I had no motivation, no drive, but that will, that sheer willpower set in. Like, I'm going to find a way to get through this. I'm going to do it. And I was army crawl my way across that finish line, and I did it. And it felt empowering and it felt awesome. What's so great about this go round is I feel like there's this, we've got a large group of us doing it together, and we can support each other and realize we're not doing it alone. Those tough days where I've got to drag myself across the finish line are that much easier because I know that I've got somebody else there supporting me, and that I know that because they're doing it, that I also want to return the favor and do it for them.
Yeah.
I want to be there for them. So like, if you needed some help to drag yourself across the finish line, I sure as hell am going to do what I can to help you get there.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to ask you is, your experience between the first time and this time, because I know you had that issue the first time, doing it lone wolf style versus doing it with the pack, right? I mean, you saw I made a post the other day in our group chat about this. I don't know that I could do this by myself. The fact that I have whatever it is, 25 other people in that group to lean on, and also they've set a standard, and I am not going to fail that standard. I am going to toe the line. I'm gonna be responsible to holding that standard for my team, and I think that that's a huge thing. I think teamwork is probably something in the future that we need to talk about, because to me it's a powerful tool. It's having that responsibility to others, of holding others to a standard, is it's a powerful thing. So.
Yeah. I also think you're a little scared Nolan will bust your balls if you find a way to fail.
Oh yeah. Well, listen, there's a lot of guys in there that I just don't want to listen to the shit that they're going to give if somebody just throws up the white flag. So
it'd be relentless. Yeah, you can't let that happen.
So this has been a great conversation, and I think I encourage people to come check us out on our website, untamingmasculinity.com. We'll have all of our socials up there. You can also listen to this on pretty much all the podcast forums or platforms rather, and we've got a YouTube channel, which I'm not going to share the link. We need 100. I was looking at it yesterday. We need 100 YouTube followers before we get a nice clean link. So once we get that, I'll throw that up there. But you can find the link on the website. So come check us out there. You'll find the socials. You'll find the podcast information, a little bit more about us, and that's it. So Brad, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate this conversation. It's always good to sit down and talk with you.
Yeah, this has been a great one today. It's been ready to get after it today.
All right, fellas. So go out, get active, make sure you're finding a way or making one, and we'll talk to you next time.